Welcome to the Language Service Assisted Listening System reimbursement process for the Advisory Neighborhood Commissioners training session. This training is being conducted by Rosa Carrillo, Language Access Program Director, and Laura Gonzalez, Language Access Program Support Specialist. Today's training is being presented by the DC Office of Human Rights. Who is the DC Office of Human Rights? The DC Office of Human Rights was created to enforce the DC Human Rights Act, known as the DCHRA of 1977, to protect our residents, employees, and visitors from discrimination. It is one of the nation's most progressive civil rights law. It has many more expensive protected traits, and it has broader coverage than Title VII. Although the word always existed, it was not until 1999 that the DC Office of Human Rights was founded as a separate agency. In addition to creating OHR, the DCHRA also created the Commission on Human Rights. Our physical office for filing complaint is located at 441 4th Street Northwest, Suite 570, or online, you can file a complaint at ohr.dc.gov. In what areas OHR enforces law? OHR enforces law in 4 areas: employment, housing, educational institutions, public accommodations, or government services. What are the laws and the protections that we cover under the DCHRA? There are 23 protected traits under the DCHRA. As you can see on the screen, they are all listed, and they will be also available for you after this presentation. Let's talk about now about the DC Language Access Act of 2004. Also, for your information, ANCs are not required to be in compliance with the Language Access Act, as the Language Access Act does not have jurisdiction on ANC. However, ANCs have the opportunity to utilize the language services resources, as we explain next. Now, the Language Access Act, just to give you an overview, was passed in April 2004 and requires that all district government agencies, public-facing contractors, and grantees to ensure that limited and non-English proficient, known as LEP and NEP individuals, have access to the full range of government services while receiving translation and interpretation service. The spirit of this law exists to eliminate language-based discrimination, enabling district residents, workers, and visitors to receive equivalent information and services from the district government, regardless of what language they speak. Now we will explain what the ANC reimbursement for translation and interpretation services and assistant listening services cover under the Advisory Neighborhood Commission's Omnibus Act of 2016. Under this, OHR will reimburse advisory neighborhood commissions for translation and interpretation services, including for residents and commissioners who require such services in relation to commission's documents or proceedings. Also, as you see in the second bullet under the same act, it also includes reimbursement for purchase and or rental of assisted listening systems. This is as described in the 2010 American with Disability Act, that will help for the use of hearing impaired residents or commissioners at commission proceedings. It's included for reimbursement. Please note that the ANC Omnibus Act of 2016 does not cover American Sign Language, known as ASL. Now we're going to review what language services are included in the reimbursement services. ANCs may request reimbursement for costs incurred in providing the following 3 options: multilingual verbal interpretation for proceedings, video remote interpretation, in-person interpretation. Either video or in-person can be can be conducted in a simultaneous or consecutive mode. Also, it includes multilingual written document translations, and rental or purchase of assisted listening system. Now that we mentioned about the three types of services that are covered under the reimbursement services that we have available for ANCs, we will explain what the verbal interpretation service includes. ANC may receive reimbursement for interpretation service costs incurred for residents and commissioners who require such service in relation to commission meetings and other proceedings. The three type of interpretation services most frequently used during the ANC meetings are telephonic interpretation, is when an interpreter is called into a phone or conference call, or we call it on-demand interpretation service. This is a suitable service for direct communication with an LEP and NEP speaking neighbor. For this, we require to have an account with the company that provides telephonic on-demand interpretation services. In-person interpretation service is when the interpreter is physically on site for the proceeding. Also, is suitable for direct communication with LEP and NEP speaking neighbors. Virtual remote interpretation is when the interpreter is called into a virtual platform such as Microsoft Teams, Zoom, or WebEx. It's also suitable for meetings, public forums with LEP and NEP speaking neighbors. On the next slide, we're going to explain the two modes of interpretation service that you may request. Keep in mind, for simultaneous interpretation, we will describe soon, it might require additional equipment. The type of interpretations that we can have available for interpretation service are consecutive interpretation, which is a mode of interpreting in which an interpreter conveys a speaker words orally into target language during breaks in the speaker's communication. Consecutive interpretation may take more time, but can be done by a single interpreter. Simultaneous interpretation is a mode of interpretation in which the interpreter translates the speaker's message from the source language to the target language in real time. Unlike in consecutive interpreting, the natural flow of the speaker is not disturbed and allows for a smooth output for the listeners. Simultaneous interpretation may require more than one interpreter, as to not exhaust an interpreter for long interactions or interactions with multiple speakers. As we mentioned, the simultaneous interpretation may require portable interpretation equipment. They can be also covered as a rental equipment in the reimbursement service. Now we'll move to on the next language service, which is document translation. If the ANC has guest speakers during their ANC meetings, and the guest speakers are from the DC government agencies, it's important to highlight, or funded entities, it's important to highlight that these entities are responsible to translate their own information or material. ANCs will be reimbursed for translations that are created by ANC commissioners. Let's take a look at what the document translation is. Or require. ANCs may receive reimbursement for document translation service costs, including for residents and commissioners who require such services in relation to commission documents, meetings, and other proceedings. Example of documents that ANCs may be asked to translate: meeting agendas and minutes, outreach material, flyers, announcements, fact sheets, newsletters, and written motions, contracts, applications, brief, summaries, and other documents being reviewed or considered by the ANC. The third service that ANC may request reimbursement is the assistant listening system. ANC may receive reimbursement for the purchase or rental of assistive listening systems as described in the 2010 Americans with Disability Act standards for accessible design, produced by hearing impaired residents or commissioners at commission proceedings. Also, OHR would like to take this opportunity to share with you a language access resource that can be utilized for outreach purposes. As you can see on the screen, it is also highlighted recommended to include tagline for notices, correspondences, documents for LEP and NEP constituents. Please be aware that translated multilingual taglines is available at OHR website, or you can request them via email from any member of the Language Access Program. You see on the screen, we have the taglines that that are in the top 6 languages in the DC area. These are the top 6 languages most encountered in the area, which are Spanish, Amharic, French, Chinese, Korean, and Vietnamese. Also, the taglines are used if a document cannot be translated in its entirety. It is recommended then that one can utilize translated taglines that tells the reader of the availability for multilingual language access, such as this example shown in the screen. On the next slide, we will show you a sample of a proof flyer of an event announcement that includes multilingual taglines. As you can see, this event highlights the taglines in the different languages, explaining the availability of interpretation services for the event. Let's talk about now how to request reimbursement. With you is Laura Gonzalez, who is the point of contact for any language reimbursement inquiries.
Now I will explain how to request reimbursement. The process to reimburse is simple. It is simply to email laura.gonzalez@dc.gov and copy oancs@dc.gov. Both email addresses are listed on the screen. To be able to receive payment from the district government, there is a process to establish new established ANCs into the District Integrated Financial System, also known as DIFS. Please contact them directly at the email suppliers@dc.gov or call 202-442-6870 or visit their website on the screen where they have detailed instructions on how to establish an ANC commissioner as a vendor that can receive reimbursement payment. Make sure that when you are submitting your reimbursement request to OHR that you are using the ANC reimbursement form, which will be on the next slide later to come. Now, most ANCs who had been established before October 2022 and had received any payment from the district probably established an account with the previous system of DIFS that was called the Procurement Center for Excellence, also known as PCOE. If you're an ANC commissioner that has already established with PCOE, then it does not have to create a DIFS account unless your ANC is updating vital contact information, including phone number and email address, and or changing payment method from check to automatic clearing house, also known as ACH. Please add your bank account information and submit a bank letter or a voided check. Please note, if you have major changes to the contact, then OHR recommends that you reestablish through the new system, also known as DIFS, so that you may receive payment for language reimbursement. Once the DIFS account has been established, we have a two-step process essentially for process reimbursement. You would simply email laura.gonzalez@dc.gov the proposal quote from the vendor that has provided this language service to you, and also the invoice and credit card receipt of anything that shows payment had been made to the vendor in the same amount as the quote provided, as well as evidence that shows the language service was rendered. It could be an ANC meeting, notes, or sign-in sheet from the interpreter, as an example. This would be any proof of payment that includes the invoice number that was submitted by the vendor. You could Also, send it to Laura for approval, and she would send all supported documents to an account manager at the Office of Chief Financial Office, and they will process the payment to whatever method you choose to receive payment, whether by check or ACH. And then you will receive reimbursed funds from the District Integrated Financial System. On the next slide, we see a sample of the reimbursement form. This form is on our OHR website for you to download. You may contact OHR directly for the forms, or if you need guidance or clarity, you may also reach out to the Language Access Program. We recommend submitting the reimbursement forms on a monthly basis. Do not wait to submit all at once or too close to the end of the fiscal year, because it can take extra time to get reimbursed for language services. After you submit this form, I will, at OHR, fill out the bottom end of the form for approval. It can range between 5 to 7 business days to receive payment. Please ensure that you are filling out all required boxes on the form so you may receive reimbursement payment. Finally, we would like to announce the timeline to submit language service reimbursement forms. The final deadline to submit reimbursement requests for language services rendered in fiscal year 24, which is October 1st, 2023 through September 30th, 2024, will be October 6th, 2024. Please note, as soon as a language service was rendered and service was paid to the vendor, you may submit reimbursement requests as soon as possible. OHR encourages ANC commissioners to submit reimbursement requests monthly. And finally, the deadline to submit reimbursement requests for language services rendered in fiscal year 25, which is from October 1st, 2024 through September 30th, 2025, will be October 5th, 2025. On the list are the deadlines, so you need to make sure to fill out the reimbursement form so you may be reimbursed. On the next slide, we have the district government citywide contract preferred vendors for translation and interpretation. There is no restriction on which language service vendor or listening device, assistive listening system you may choose from. However, these are the 3 preferred vendors in the district government that have gone through quality assurance processes. You are not limited to these 3, but they are examples of the preferred vendors of who you might reach out to for language services for your LEP and NEP neighbors. ANCs may seek services from any language service vendor on the screen and receive reimbursement for payments to any of the language service vendors. They are known as Adian Consulting Solutions, Inc., known as AXI. The contact information is on the screen. You may reach out to AXI. Second vendor is Multicultural Services, also known as MCS. If you want to reach out, please reach out to MCS directly, which is their contact information on the screen listed. And the third preferred vendor is known as TransPerfect, and their contact information is also listed on the screen. Finally, we want to invite ANC commissioners to trainings that OHR holds. We offer consultations to any ANC commissioners who might want to maximize this resource and provide outreach to LEP/NEP limited English and non-English proficient neighbors. We also provide Know Your Rights trainings for constituencies, and if it's a language access specific Know Your Rights training, the Language Access Program will provide it. On the screen, you can contact the Language Access Program if you are interested. Their email addresses are on the screen for you to reach out directly. Thank you for taking the Language Service Assistive Listening System Reimbursement Process Training for ANC Commissioners. Feel free to call us at 202-727-4559 or follow OHR social media accounts to stay updated, or visit us in person at 441 4th Street, Suite 570N, Washington, D.C., located near Judiciary Square. This session is now ending. Thank you.